All right, so hello and welcome everyone. So I'm so glad to see you both here. For this month, our monthly webinar series, we'll be doing eeEvaluation, so new opportunities to take your evaluation to the next level. And if you're not familiar with CAE, our mission is to advance environmental education in Colorado by fostering collaboration, mobilizing support, and driving excellence. One CAE member reaches 900 learners, and our 850 CAE members reach over 800,000 learners. And if you're not familiar with our CAE monthly webinar series, we choose monthly topics of interest to the environmental education community within Colorado with hopes of sharing and sparking ideas, improving practice, and connecting with one another. Our upcoming events and opportunities. So our next webinar will be getting to know the new Colorado EE plan. Look for registration information soon. And we also have two awesome opportunities coming up that relate to our topic today on evaluation. And then I know we're all very familiar with Zoom, so I can just speed through this quickly, but just keep your line muted while others are speaking. Use the chat function to send a message to the presenter or all participants. If you can chat in your name, organization, and where you're connecting from, and then you'll also receive a recording from today. And then I will do land acknowledgement and recognition of racial injustice. So one way that we can support equity is by beginning our day by acknowledging our history of colonization and oppression, and that it still continues today. It is important to remember that what we know as Colorado today was the traditional home of the Apache, Arapaho, Cheyenne, the Pueblo tribes, Shoshone tribe, and the Ute Nation. Historically, environmental education has been tailored to white communities, and the contributions of Black, Indigenous, and people of color are often excluded from our narrative. Black, Indigenous, and people of color have vibrant, rich histories and cultures that contribute to our field. We all have responsibility to continue work to change the systems that continue to allow injustice and inequity to exist. All right, and with all of that said, I'll be introducing our amazing presenter, which is our Executive Director, Katie Maven. So I will pass it off to her.
Thanks so much, Brianna, and thanks so much for joining us. I know that this is an incredibly busy time of year, so we are a very small but mighty group here. So this will be super informal and jump in, ask questions. This is very just kind of informational, and we're going to spend a little bit of time kind of just talking about the Collective Outcomes Project and then have opportunities for questions. So dive in, jump in, we can take this wherever it needs to go. Since we are such a small group and you have met me and you've met Brianna, I'd love to have both of you introduce yourselves. Carly, can we start with you?
Sure. Thank you for getting me in last minute. I live up in Estes Park, and I just started at Rocky Mountain Conservancy on Tuesday. So I'm the new education director here. And one of the focuses that I'm coming in on is creating a more robust evaluation system for the programs that are offered. And so this was like right at the top of my list. So thank you for letting me jump in.
Of course, welcome. And how about Delaney?
Hi, Delaney here. I'm with Bird Conservancy of the Rockies, but I'm in our Nebraska office. So I'm in Scottsbluff, Nebraska right now. I'm an education manager, and I've been here for almost 2 years now. And yeah, we are looking to get a more formal evaluation system set up. So right now it's just a lot of Google Forms, and they're everywhere, and it's not super concise over the programs.
Awesome. Well, great. Well, we will dive in. I'm going to try to share my screen here, and we'll see if this works. Nope. It is telling me the file is in use. Well, never mind. I was going to try and share this super fancy. but we will just do it the old-fashioned way. All right, well, there we go. Awesome. Well, I'm super excited about the Collective Outcomes project. It's been really fun to work on and really think about how do we make evaluation easier? It's evaluation in any sort of education in general is just really hard. There's a lot of really slippery things we're trying to measure. And it's one of those things that is hard to build into your schedule. And so we've been just thinking a lot about how do we make this easier for folks and build capacity within the field to do effective evaluation. And so we've been working with both Blue Lotus Consulting and Evaluation, and now we're working with Point B Strategies as evaluators on this project to really help us think about what that looks like. And we could not do this work without the Pisces Foundation, who has funded this initiative for the last 4 years in terms of really helping us think and get it off the ground. So like I said, today we're just going to talk a little bit about what are the collective outcomes, how do you fit into them, how can you use them, and then we're going to talk about a couple, if you're interested, a couple options for like diving in deeper and how you can engage with the process and get some support if that's what you're needing. And then we'll just open it up for questions. So before we dive in, I do just want to say that when we think about the collective outcomes, we're doing our best to really think about environmental education plus. So we're using the broadest possible definition of environmental education that we can. And we know that a lot of people call similar work different names, but we're all working towards similar goals. And so we'll dive in and talk a little bit about the impacts that we're looking at and whether or not you call it environmental education. If you are working towards similar impacts, we hope these tools and resources will be useful to you no matter what you're calling it. So big picture, the Colorado Collective Outcomes Project is really seeking to do 4 things. And the big one is like, how do we showcase through evaluation how EE contributes to our overall quality of life? It's a story that we haven't been able to tell effectively, and environmental education often still comes across as something that is like nice to have. People are highly supportive of it, but it's not viewed as essential. And how do we switch that frame of thinking and use evaluation data to help us tell the story that this really is essential to many aspects of our daily lives? So in order to do that, we need to think on a couple of different levels. We need to build capacity for evaluation in the field. A lot of us never had training in evaluation and just got thrown into doing it and using feedback forms. And how do we help build our own knowledge and skills so that we can do some of this work? And in doing so, how do we develop a framework for evaluating EE that can be used across organizations? And that's something we've been working on for several years so that we can talk to each other about our results. We can learn from each other. We can share different tools for evaluation to make this a little more streamlined and a little bit easier. And then finally, we really wanted to make sure that as we're thinking about this and as we're doing this work, that we're consistently talking to funders and thinking about both what they want to know and what we want to know, and how do we mesh those things together so that we're not framing our evaluations just around funders' needs, but we're really working together. Now, I think funding often does drive. If we can start having those conversations and start aligning how we talk about it, hopefully we can get to a place where the needs in the field are driving that. And that's what funders want to know about. So when we think about kind of the end goal for this work, what we would love to see is a shift in how we're using evaluation data. And this is still years down the road. We're like to build to this point where we would move. But if you think about evaluation today, it really exists in silos. You collect the data from your program or your classroom. That data is probably shared within your organization for program improvement. And it's usually shared with a foundation or whoever your stakeholder is that is requesting that data. But it really lives in this silo. And so we're hoping to create a system where at some point we can be sharing that evaluation data. And if we're measuring similar things and talking about it in similar ways, we can learn from what other organizations are doing and increase our program improvement tenfold because we can be sharing information across organizations. And foundations and funders tend to hold a lot of this evaluation data that we might be able to be using collectively if it was pooled together to bring more support to the field. And so how do we activate some of that and make it available to generate more support for the field? So that's the end goal of what we'd like to do and what we'd like to see. And really, we'd just love to have more collaboration happening around evaluation and how do we do that? So we really started with defining what these collective outcomes are. What as a state do we want to know? And what do we want to measure? What's currently being measured? And so we pulled together over 2 years, practitioners in environmental education, plus research and evaluators, as well as funders to really kind of ask those questions and see what comes out as common themes among what the different stakeholders are really interested in. We landed on 5 impact areas, and these are all things that environmental education contributes to, but isn't like fully responsible for. There are many, many things, say in conservation, many efforts, whether it's land preservation or restoration, that go into ensuring that all Colorado ecosystems are healthy, vibrant, and valued. But environmental education also plays a role and is a piece of that puzzle. And so when we looked at kind of what folks were interested in and, over those 2 years, gathering stakeholders together, these were the 5 big outcome areas in terms of why people were engaging in EE and what impact they wanted to have. So again, one of them is conservation. We're looking for conservation outcomes and impact. We want all Colorado ecosystems to be healthy, vibrant, and valued. We want a big impact area is K-12 education. How does environmental education support and ensure pre-K through 12 students are lifelong learners with successful school outcomes? Whether that's attendance to engagement in learning to standardized test scores, understanding academic content. There's a lot of outcomes within that education bucket. Positive youth development, that all children and youth grow into responsible, resilient, engaged citizens that care for themselves, their natural environment, and their communities. This is really thinking around skills like leadership and thinking around civic engagement and thinking about some of those skills that youth need to develop to be fully competent and productive citizens. Health and wellness was another big area. And I will say this category was something that folks were interested in measuring, really wanted to measure and be a part of, but weren't yet. It was something that I think is a harder one for us, has been a harder one for us to tackle in terms of what folks are currently doing. They're really living in this conservation and education world so far. But health and wellness came up as a huge interest area. And that through increased safe access, connection to, and comfort in the natural environment, all Coloradans are healthy and well physically, mentally, and emotionally. A lot of overlap between positive youth development and health and wellness. A lot of the things that are associated with positive youth development are associated with mental health. But some very clear indicators in the health and wellness side that environmental education can contribute to. And then the fifth big bucket area is social justice, that all Coloradans have access to an opportunity to experience the outdoors. And so this is really thinking about access and thinking about how all communities in Colorado have access to these types of learning opportunities. So I'll just pause there for a second and just invite you to share, like, what resonates with you? Where does most of the programming you work with fall in what bucket?
Well, I'm kind of learning a little bit about what the focuses are going to be, because our programming took a 2-year hiatus completely. And so we're actually not doing programming even yet this summer. But I can see a little bit of everything, but I think most of our programming does fall in, conservation and education, with a little bit of the social justice, trying to expand more of the social justice as we renew.
Awesome. How about you, Delaney?
Definitely the education and conservation buckets on here. I can see a little bit of the positive youth development with one of our after school nature clubs, of working a lot with those children, but I can see all of the aspects fitting in.
Absolutely. So if we dig in a little bit deeper into, like, what does that look like? What are you actually measuring on the program side? These were some of the outcomes that came up the strongest across all of these, the community meetings that we had. So I'm just going to invite you, I'll read a few of them out loud, but I invite you to scan these as you're scan and check out what's on the list and see if those resonate with you, what things apply to your programming. And you might have a spattering, you might fall mostly in one section. Conservation is things like increase in nature connection, increase in stewardship actions, measuring a desire to participate in environmental action, increase in positive attitudes, increase in civic and community engagement. Education, we're measuring more things like understanding program content, increasing knowledge, increase in critical thinking or problem solving skills, increase in engagement in learning. The workforce readiness skills fall into this section. Increased time spent learning environmental and outdoor learning. And we also looked at kind of programmatically an increase in culturally relevant curriculum. In the positive youth development side, we're looking at an increase in the number of opportunities across the state that provide a continuum of experiences. So how are students building across multiple experiences? an increase in the number of youth experiences in the outdoors that support basic needs to feel safe and positive. The number of youth-directed internships, mentors, authentic adult and peer relationships, increase in understanding of healthy and unhealthy risk, increase in opportunities for civic and community engagement. Health and wellness is things like increase in unstructured free time, an increase in time spent outdoors, increase in comfort in the outdoors, decrease in fear and anxiety, a decrease in barriers to accessing nature, an increase in participants with safe and convenient pathways to nature, increased nature connection, increase in perceived health and wellness, and increase in outdoor community-based health intervention. So particularly if you're looking at the community level. And then social justice, we're looking at an increase in participants that feel welcome, an increase in the programs that honor diversity in outdoor spaces, increase in diversity of organizational leadership, increase in organizations that are providing DEI training, increase in perception of what a safe and healthy community looks like, and increase in culturally aware and responsive programming. And I will say, as we dove into this section in particular, this is a lot of self-assessment and really thinking about, from an internal structure, doing the evaluation internally on your systems and processes before you start evaluating externally. So taking a look at that, I'm just curious, is there anything that both of you kind of leaned towards the conservation and education buckets? Is there anything that jumps out that maybe you didn't focus on initially, or anything that really strikes you looking at these?
I think it's interesting for me in thinking about who the audience is, you know what I mean? Because in a lot of my experience, really focused on working with children. And now my audience is going to be a lot more diverse in age. So kind of thinking about, you know, what education means to an adult versus what education might mean to, you know, early childhood education programs, et cetera. And so I guess just kind of that scope of defining these outcomes, if that makes sense,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like for each of those audiences is something that I'm kind of thinking about right now.
Absolutely, makes total sense. And these are going to look different in different contexts and settings. All of them will, for sure. It's one of the challenges, I think, of collective evaluation and really thinking about this collectively. And it's one of the coolest parts, I think, is that being able to honor how different this looks, whether you're talking about different ages, different settings, different locations. We do this work really differently, and that's a good thing. So yeah, absolutely. Anything that jumps out to you, Delaney?
You know, a lot does. I'm like, what do I want to focus on? Yeah, I mean, also looking at the aspect of like a lot of our programs are for the public, a lot are for school children, but also like within the social justice, like thinking about, again, kind of like the audience, it doesn't always have to be the public, like people outside the organization, like in the increase in providers DEI training for all staff jumped out to me because like this applies to like people within our own organization can be participants as well in this. So
absolutely. And one other thing that I'll just throw out here that I was really interesting when we were convening folks and exploring these in community meetings was that I think a lot of folks when they looked at just the 5 impact areas, might pick one. And then when they started digging into the actual outcomes, we're like, actually, I also fit here. And I think there's a huge opportunity in the field for us to really look at, like, where else do we fit that might open up brand new funding possibilities that we've never thought about before. And these categories that we worked on, in working with the funders, the language used correlates with how, when you're looking at kind of generalizations, how funders categorize their funding priorities to kind of help align how some of these things line out. So there's so much value in just taking the time to see, like, where do I fit and how do I align, and what might I not have been looking at before that might be a new opportunity for us. So on a very surface level, depending on where you are in your process, you can jump in kind of at the lowest commitment level to these. But these are all available and defined on our website. I'm going to pop the link back in the chat here. Oh, maybe not. Oh, there's my bar. So that you can download full descriptions of all of these if you want to dig into them more. There's also a worksheet on there that just kind of gives a very basic, like, we're doing this, we would like to be doing this. And you can kind of just go through all of them and make notes about what you're currently measuring and what you're not measuring, just to spend some time thinking about how you align. That can be a useful tool. So those are the collective outcomes. That was kind of 2 years of really thinking about how do all of these things fit together. And we've been trying to come up with a variety of tools to help organizations engage wherever makes sense for them, because it's really going to be different for every organization, where you're at, where your needs are, and what that looks like. So right now, where we're at, and hopefully this will grow over time, but we have 3 different ways that you can plug in and use these materials. On the left-hand side, we have eeEvaluation in a box that we are launching this fall. And this is for folks who maybe you have limited experience in evaluation, or you just don't have enough capacity to do it. You want outside support and you need it to be really low cost. There are a lot of great evaluators out there that can help do a fully customized evaluation. This is an opportunity to tap in and do a semi-customized evaluation with an evaluator, take some of that work off your plate at a lower cost than you might be able to find working one-on-one with an evaluator. So we'll talk more about each of these, but that's one way to tap in. If you're just looking for training, you want to spend more time learning about the evaluation process, and you want to build your internal capacity as an organization and jump out and dive and go, we have a collective outcomes training series that you can tap into that is available both in a synchronous virtual format, as well as we're launching a self-paced version of that training this fall. And then finally, we're going to be launching also in the fall, which we're really excited about, is an evaluation fellowship. And this is for folks who might have some experience in evaluation, but are really looking to dig in with peers to talk about some of the challenges and how other organizations navigate them, and work with some expert evaluators along that process. And so we're super excited to launch that and see what learning comes out of it. So those are kind of the 3 big buckets, and we'll dive into each one individually as what opportunities exist. And we'll start with the evaluation training series, just in terms of for folks who just want to build their capacity and dive right in and do all the work to evaluate internally. So this is when we do it synchronously, it's a 3-session training series. And we spend the first session really focusing on evaluation planning. In my estimation, that session is the meat of it. It's the most important part. And your evaluation results at the end are going to be so much better if you do that planning really effectively and really get to know and understand your programs before you dive into looking at what tools to use. So that evaluation planning session, I think, is really fabulous for really kind of just thinking about and outlining what you're doing. And we will, in the process of doing that, we align your goals with the collective outcomes. And the collective outcomes provide a really easy, almost like plug and play way to build out a logic model and an evaluation plan, because you can pull from what's already existing, which is great. The second session, I think, is the session that most folks get most excited about, and it's give me the tools. And we dive into all kinds of different tools that can be used for each of those 5 different impact areas, and how to do data collection and what are some of the common pitfalls around that, and like really dive into what some of the available tools are. And then finally, that third session is around how to analyze your data and then how to communicate the results of that analysis. And that one is also, I think, pretty fun. As part of that training series, in the tools and data collection, we have over 17 different tools that we've sourced from across the country that align with those different impact areas that you can dig into and use. And they're all things that you can modify. We don't expect that for most of us, we're going to be able to pick something up and use that right off the shelf. We're going to need to tweak it for your needs, for your audience, so it can be delivered in the way that makes the most sense for you. So all of these are editable and available for you to use. And then in the communicating results, part of what we share, and this is actually also available on our website, we worked with the Frameworks Institute, which is a national research nonprofit, and they do significant research into how to create messaging that promotes social change. And how do we really think about taking things from kind of one-off support for an initiative. Like, I think an example in EE would be like, oh, you're telling me this is important. I think it's important for my kid. And a lot of times that's what our messaging does, is we'll communicate something and somebody will be like, oh, great, that's perfect for here. What Frameworks is really trying to do is build overall public will. So how we're changing our story doesn't just say, this is what we need, this grant was great for this school in this place. It helps you say, this was great for this school in this place. And with even more funding, we could do this for all kids. And this is why it's important for everyone. And there are some really great tools in this guide that we dive into to use. There's a lot of ways that we currently message environmental education that people hear a different story than we're intending. And they used some of their research to really compile some tools that we can use to do that. So that's a really cool resource. I will also say it's one of those things that I think when you read it, you take in a certain amount. When you have someone explain it, like watch a webinar, part of a training, you're going to take in twice as much. And then when you have the opportunity to talk about how you're using it, that's when it's really going to click in terms of how to communicate those results. And like I said, we offer this in a 3-session synchronous, where you can be in a group with other folks or totally self-paced. And the self-paced version, we have a moderator. And so there will be homework throughout the course where you'll submit your evaluation plan, you'll submit your logic model and be able to get feedback on it as you're going through the course. So it's not just kind of clicking through videos and reading, it's actually getting feedback as you go. So that's the training series. These next two I'm really excited about. They're brand new. We're just launching them this fall. So we have high hopes for them, but really wanted to talk about them with folks now. So you could be thinking about, is this something to dive into? eeEvaluation in a box is direct support from a consultant to do a semi-customized evaluation. So in talking with our evaluators who do evaluations for a living, one of the biggest costs to doing an evaluation for an organization is really deep learning about that program. And they have to spend a lot of time really getting to know the program so that they can develop an evaluation for it. So what we're piloting here is that we start this program with a 3-hour training in August. All the participants will attend this, will align to the collective outcomes, and we'll really work on how do you build that logic model. And it will be your responsibility as a participant to put together that logic model based on the training. And that's going to help the consultant or our evaluator get up to speed twice as fast with what the program needs are to help customize an evaluation. Our evaluator will have, each participant will have 4 hours of technical assistance one-on-one with the evaluator to help develop a semi-customized tool. And I say semi-customized tool because basically what we're going to do is create a menu of options that are all aligned with the collective outcomes, and you'll be able to select off of that menu, add a couple of your own questions. But the idea is that we're using similar language and similar questions so that we can do some of this work and streamline it across organizations to bring a cost savings. You as the organization will collect data from September through May. And during that time, you'll get an additional 2 hours of one-on-one technical assistance if you have questions about run into issues with data collection, need to make changes, need support in figuring something out, whatever that looks like. And then you'll submit your data at the end of May to our evaluator, and she will analyze that for you and create an individualized report for your organization based on what was collected. And as part of the whole process, your data will be anonymized and part of a collective report so that we can see across organizations, what are we seeing and what kind of outcomes are we doing, are we having, and how can we build our collective impact in the field and hopefully bring more resources to the field with some of that data. Couple things to note about the eeEvaluation in a box. There is a cost to this. We're estimating based on kind of what an evaluation, totally individualized evaluation would cost. This is about half the cost of what an evaluation would cost. So members, the fee will be $2,500, and non-members, that'll be $3,000. For all of the training and the coaching, you can send 1 to 2 participants from your organization to participate in that. We really want to encourage folks to send more than one, because that helps build capacity within the organization and build tools and live with more than one person. One thing I do want to note is that the data analysis will be all quantitative. So it'll be a survey tool that we're using for this program. The technical assistance can be used for qualitative data support, but within this fee structure, they won't be able to do the qualitative data analysis. But within your technical assistance, they can coach you through how to do that on your own, and like help you with crafting those questions, crafting what qualitative data you want to collect. So we can definitely include qualitative data in the project, just not in the analysis. Hopefully that makes sense. And then I will say that the evaluation is outcome-based evaluation. So we're really looking at those end outcomes rather than more process-based evaluation in terms of a lot of questions about, did the logistics work for you? Did how did the program come together? So that's kind of where it will be based. So that is eeEvaluation in a box. And then third, the eeEvaluation Fellowship, similarly, starts with a 3-hour training. So this will get everybody kind of on the same page. It'll immerse us in those collective outcomes that we'll be working with. And as a participant, your responsibility will be to come up with your customized evaluation plan using the collective outcomes, and that training will help you do that and walk through that process. And whatever you decide to evaluate will be your project throughout the fellowship. There will be then 4 learning sessions between September and May where we really dig into what issues are coming up, how can we brainstorm together and do peer learning with evaluation experts on how to navigate some of the evaluation challenges that are coming up. Each participant will collect data from September to May, and similar to the evaluation in a box, they'll submit that, and we will include that data in the final collective report. So this is a really opportunity based on pure learning and capacity building and evaluation. Couple of things to note here. There will be a $150 fee for members, $250 for non-members. We're again encouraging 1 to 2 participants from each organization. Again, would love to have multiple folks from an organization participate. And you'll be working on a unique evaluation project throughout, but again, we'll be providing that data to a collective project where we can kind of learn from each other and what we're learning about programs across the state. What's, I think, really exciting is that we have broken down our outcomes into population level outcomes and program level outcomes. So the EE and evaluation in a box and the fellowship will all focus on those program level outcomes and what can we look at and measure within a program. But on the back end, our evaluators are doing a ton of research right now to look into what data can we collect from a state level and get a picture of, what is the status of the state or national data that we can compare to that program level data. So we have some ways to make connections between the things that are happening on the ground in the programs and how that connects back to those higher level impacts in conservation, education, positive youth development, social justice, and health and wellness. So hopefully those reports will be, will have some really interesting data in them, pulling from that both state and national research. But with that, that's kind of a summary of what's coming, what's available, the tools that are both available on our website and then more tools you can tap into, but would love to just open it up for questions about any of it. We can dig into evaluation specific questions or questions about these particular programs.
So like I said, our organization hasn't really had any kind of formal evaluation process for all of their programs. And so I definitely see one or all of these tracks being appropriate in some way, especially, you know, we're starting our programming in the fall. So having an evaluation set up prior to even starting that would be awesome. I guess it would just be more of like a budgetary question that I need to bring up. But would it be possible to do that 3 sessions training? Would that provide enough information for me to essentially go into the fellowship?
What I would,
you know what I mean?
Yes, the fellowship will start before the 3-session training starts this year, so that flow timing wise probably wouldn't work. But I would say from what I know about your background and expertise, you probably have enough just kind of general evaluation background to take that 3-hour training that is part of the fellowship and run with it.
Okay, and create that logic model and create all of that. Okay,
yeah,
cool. Because yeah, I mean, I've done evaluations in other organizations, but having nothing to really even jump off of, I'm like, well, I want to make sure it's a strong foundation. So
yeah, I would say if you were brand new to the field and had never done anything with evaluation, I wouldn't recommend jumping into the fellowship. But if you've played in it a little bit,
sure,
even if you haven't had any, formal training, I think that would be
awesome.
Yeah.
And then I'm really excited about the report that's going to end up. You said it would be like anonymous data and it would just be bringing that toward or like summarizing the outcomes, right? How many other organizations right now are participating in that? Is there a list or is there a CAE kind of like cohort that's doing that? Or
we're just opening kind of the application right now.
Okay.
So we will know, I want to say, I should know this. I want to say that we are closing applications mid-August.
Cool.
So folks can sign up between now and then. And, this is kind of a big commitment. We're really looking at least for both the evaluation in a box and the fellowship, you're signing on for a couple of multiple time over almost a year. So yeah, we're launching it right now, but wanted to give folks some time to think about it and make sure that fits in their schedules and all of those things.
Cool. Well, hopefully a lot of people sign up for that. And then the defining program outcomes, those bullet points, is that available on your website?
Yes.
On that link that you sent us?
Yes. So this one?
Yeah.
Yes. It doesn't look like this. It'll be let me just pull up here. I'll show you exactly where it lives. If I can. Share a different page here. So under programs, under ACT, there is a collective outcomes bucket. So that's the link I put in the chat. There's information that you can download about each of these programs here. And then there's an overview. This learn more about the collective outcomes developed is a PDF of those that describes each of those impact areas and all of the outcomes that fall under them. And then this is the worksheet that you can download to kind of go through your current programs and think about how they align. And then this is the telling a more effective story are the communication tools.
Perfect. Yep. I was going to look for that too. All right. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Any other questions I can answer? All right. Well, don't hesitate to reach out. I think this is, like I said, could be a big commitment. So definitely reach out with questions. Happy to talk more. And if I can't answer your question, we'll connect you with our evaluator who can definitely fill in more detail, but would love to learn with everyone this fall in terms of how we can build evaluation capacity in the state and test some of this out. So, and I nerd out a little bit on evaluation, so I'm always open for whatever questions you have. So send them my way. But with that, thanks for joining us, and yeah, have a great end of May.
The girls' last day of school today.
Oh my gosh.
Officially summer. All right. Well, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Best of luck on the project.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.